You know those moments when life shows you, without warning, exactly who's really on your side? Sometimes it doesn't come as a scream, it comes as a shove. And strangely, it's not the shove that hurts, it's the people who just sit there watching. When your mother's husband pushes you on Christmas Eve and says, "That seat is for my real daughter," the world is supposed to stop. But the most shocking part is when no one at the table thinks anything is wrong. That's when you finally learn. The quietest pain is often the most trained to go unnoticed. Here's a hard truth most people don't admit. Sometimes the family that hurts you is the same one asking you to be reasonable, be patient, don't make a scene. It's a cruel paradox. The more you try to fit, the smaller you become. But every human being has an invisible breaking point. And when it snaps, it doesn't explode. It clarifies. Suddenly, you're standing up from the table, grabbing your keys, choosing your dignity, even if everyone insists you're overreacting. What nobody tells you is this. When you finally decide to walk away, you don't lose anything. They lose access to the power they had over you. And the reward comes fast. Peace returns, truth rearranges itself, and fear finally shuts up. Today, you'll hear how one woman turned humiliation into clarity, silence into strategy, and abandonment into liberation. But before that, let me ask you something that might turn your life upside down. How many tables have you stayed at long after you were emotionally uninvited? There was something almost choreographed about the way her stepfather acted, a system of silent exclusion so precise it seemed rehearsed. He didn't need to raise his voice. One long stare, a stray comment, a calculated pause was enough to push Ava out of the frame without anyone noticing. He did it with the same casualness as someone pouring morning coffee. And every time she mentioned it, her mother delivered the same tired lines, "You're too sensitive, he's trying." Over time, Ava realized his silence cut deeper than any insult ever could. It was a silence that shrunk her, pushed her aside, taught her, unintentionally or not, that she was too much, even when trying to take up no space at all. Meanwhile, Emily sparkled. Every step she took seemed celebrated, as if the whole house existed just to reflect her brightness. Ava, on the other hand, was treated like a shadow, useful, quiet, and preferably invisible. And the wild part, patterns like these never start big. They grow in whispers. A plate not handed to her at dinner, a family joke she was never included in, a forgetfulness repeated too often to be accidental. As a mentor, I always say, exclusion rarely enters screaming. It sneaks in softly. And inside those whispers, Ava learned something she would only understand later. The shove came fast, sharp, without warning, and the cold floor sent a shock up her ribs as she fell while the entire table pretended not to see. Shame burned hotter than pain, because the worst part wasn't the fall, it was the stillness, that heavy silence that doesn't protect you, it condemns you for being inconvenient. And every single person at that table knew exactly what happened. When her mother finally spoke, it wasn't to defend her. It was to restore the peace. "Ava, sit in another chair. Don't make a scene." That sentence didn't just sting. It rewrote the room. The word real, used as a reprimand, clung to her skin like frost. If you've ever been invalidated by someone who should have been your refuge, you know exactly how that feels. Ava stood slowly, trying to reorganize not just her body, but her very place in that house. Her stepfather resumed eating as if nothing had happened, Emily avoided her eyes, and Ava realized something brutal. This dinner wasn't an exception, it was the blueprint of her life. And that realization opened a door inside her she would soon walk through. Ava walked into the kitchen with trembling hands, but this time it wasn't fear. It was a new, electric kind of trembling, like a part of her had finally woken up. She grabbed her coat, took a shaky breath, and when her mother appeared in the doorway, Ava whispered, steady and soft, "You'll regret this." It wasn't a threat. It was truth. In the car, she waited for the tears, but they never came. Instead, a strange calm settled over her. It felt like her mind had stopped negotiating crumbs. Crumbs of affection, crumbs of approval, crumbs of basic respect. That calm didn't scream, it sharpened. And inside that sharpened silence, Ava finally understood. The Christmas dinner was not the wound, it was the last straw. It was time to stop surviving on the minimum, time to act. And that clarity would guide every calculated step she took next. Back home, Ava didn't collapse into bed or curl up on the couch. She opened her laptop like someone opening a locked door they'd avoided for years. The screen lit up her face and her resolve. She started reviewing old documents, contracts, receipts, forgotten emails. Each file whispered something she had never allowed herself to hear. Memories surfaced, helping her mother with overdue bills, blocked cards, emergency repairs, responsibilities that always drifted to her unacknowledged. And slowly, the truth formed. Hidden debts, credit cards in her mother's name maxed out by the stepfather, repairs Ava paid for that were never reimbursed. When you stop apologizing for noticing, the patterns start screaming. Justice didn't require shouting, it required strategy. And Ava decided she wouldn't act from pain, but from truth. She had no idea that by morning, her silent decision would shake the very foundation of the household that ignored her. At 6:13 a.m., her phone vibrated. Then again, and again. Dozens of calls, one after another. Funny how his panic made more noise than any silence he had ever used to belittle her. Ava didn't answer a single one. Every ignored call was a reminder that she had reclaimed her center. And the audience at this point can't help but wonder, what is she going to do now? But Ava already knew. She put on her coat and headed straight to the attorney's office who had helped her mother years earlier. The truth needed a witness. The attorney's office smelled like old paper and reality, the kind of place where people come when pretending no longer works. Ava handed over the file with steady hands. The attorney skimmed through it, eyebrows tightening. Your mother doesn't know any of this, does she? The next day, her mother arrived looking small, worn down by years she didn't know she was carrying. The attorney laid out the documents, the debts, the dates, the signatures. Every page was a mirror reflecting a truth she had refused to see. It was like watching someone finally notice the crack in the wall that had always been there, just never acknowledged. Her mother's phone buzzed relentlessly. 37, 41, 47 calls from the stepfather. For the first time, she didn't pick up. The silence was powerful, almost sacred. She turned to Ava and said, "He pushed you. I should have defended you." Simple words, late words, but healing ones. Then came the decision Ava never expected to hear. I'm not going back home. I'm going to your aunt's. Ava didn't celebrate. She simply exhaled, watching someone step out of a shadow so old they'd forgotten sunlight existed. A few days later, they met at a small cafe. Her mother looked different, less weighed down. She admitted that she was too tired to see. For the first time, she didn't defend her husband. She didn't minimize Ava's pain. She said she wanted to learn to protect herself and her daughter. Deep changes begin exactly like this, in quiet places with honest words. Ava realized then that protecting herself wasn't betrayal. It wasn't selfish. It was survival. And at last, truth was reclaiming the space fear had once occupied. In the end, Ava's story isn't about a shove at Christmas dinner. It's about years of swallowed silence, emotional crumbs accepted as meals, and the precise moment someone decides they're done living like that. So here's the real question. At what tables are you still sitting, even though there's no seat for you there? What small but powerful choice can you make today to reclaim your place in your own life? If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice might be the courage someone else needs. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories that help you see your life with more clarity and truth.